Before I get underway here with the slideshow, which Liz is going to do the technical end of, I want to acknowledge both Joan's contributions and Liz's, because we use Joan's scrapbooks for the photos and newspaper articles, and we use Liz's technology. I couldn't begin to do this. All I did was put together a script. So, at the risk of talking about a process many of you are familiar with, I will tell you how the Raging Grannies got started. And you can compare it to your own stories. So, ready? In the beginning, before there were Montreal Raging Grannies, there was WIND. Now you may wonder what WIND stands for. It was the acronym for West Islanders for Nuclear Disarmament. And we have some of those people here with us tonight who are among the original founders. The Raging Granny group here got started 25 years ago. I think you're aware of that. And it began with Joan Hadwell, whom you know. She attended an Armex demonstration in Ottawa, and many of us have been to Armex in Kansas, where she learned about the birth of the Victoria Raging Grannies. And she'd heard about the Raging Grannies on Man Alive. So, of course, Joan, being Joan, decided we should start a group here. And she got the members of WIND on board, and that includes, in addition to Joan, Barbara Seacrest, and Mary Rowan. Jean Perot was with us. Unfortunately, the photo's a bit flawed, and Jean Perot succumbed to cancer some years ago, but she was among the original four. And you're all going to get to stand up and take a bow later, you founders. So, in no time at all, the fledgling group was joined by longtime activists from the Montreal chapter, a voice of women, and you were active in VOW? No, you are. It was a perfect fit. Now we have a serious group of strong, committed women, and gradually more came on board. And these are some of the original members in the first few years. Joan recalls that one of our earliest gigs came when Ottawa put out a call to granny groups across the country to call upon their local armed services recruitment offices. And I know that many of the groups have done this, and I know they've done it in the United States. The strategy was to ask recruiters to take grannies in place of their sons and grandsons. And this happened at the beginning of what people now call the first Gulf War, the war in Kuwait. Well, the recruiters, as some of you know, they didn't know what to do with us. Soon, the Montreal chapter of the Grannies was a going concern, attracting the interest of the media and the imagination and support of the public. Now here we are, having an interview, which is after all why we exist. And we have Mary Raging, and we have, the next shot, Raging Mad. And I think this is what we do best, so I was glad we could find a few pictures of this. The next major accomplishment was getting ourselves recorded doing a CD. You could see us all there with our earphones on. That was great fun, and I know some of the other groups have done the same thing. We were pleased. Oh, we've had headlines, I almost forgot. This is the way the press described us. Some of these may look familiar to you. Now the next thing that happened is we began to get the YMCA Peace Medal. Now here's Joan, the first recipient of the Peace Medal amongst the Grannies, and she also got the Helen Prize, which I believe was named after Helen Caldecott, am I right? So there you have a picture of Joan, and then the whole group won the prize. That was 2 years later. Here's our certificate. There we are, gathered for a photo op. And then Marguerite Philadelphia won the prize. So we're quite proud of our record there, and we're pleased that the YMCA made that possible for us. Other highlights, which are too numerous to mention, but which stand out, were the summit in 2001. It's a little hard to make out Joan next to the woman in the wheelchair, K-Boy, because her face is covered with a mask, a scarf to protect her from the tear gas. I think there were about 6 or 8 Grannies on that. I'm not sure I wasn't part of it. They didn't know what to do with us there either. Then we were able to join forces with the Mémé Déjeuner. And the ones on the left, some of them may look familiar to you, were among the original Mémé Déjeuner, and we often do demonstrations with them, and then sometimes they do their own in their part of Montreal, and supporting their causes, and we do ours. So that picture, I think, was taken sometime in the, well, whenever after the Mémés got started. What year was it? Louise, it is 2000?
Wait.
2001.
Wait.
So the next little bit, you're going to have just a little bit of a video. And this is one of our favorite gigs. So I'll let the video tell the story. Grannies have been going since 1989, so we've been here for 20 years now. There's a French chapter called Les Mémés Déchaînées, which means unchained grandmothers. And they really started in Victoria in 1986, when a lot of grandmothers dressed up and got on board the Rainbow Warriors, protesting the presence of nuclear warheads in Canadian waters. So we've been around now for over 20 years, and the movement has spread from Canada to the United States, which makes us feel pretty smart. Only 2 provinces that don't allow consumers to get a deposit back on their wine bottles. And we feel that if the wine bottles had a 20-cent deposit on them, people would be a lot more careful with them. They would take them back to the liquor store, get their deposit back, and they wouldn't be going into landfill and recycling bins. That's why we have these displays here. We think that the bottles should be used again and again, the way beer bottles are used. It seems to make good sense to us.
Those wine bottles, those fine bottles can all be used to other ends. A 20-cent deposit is a better way to make sure every bottle gets another day. Mother Earth will be a better place to play. Let's drink to that our band.
Now another demonstration that we've done over the years, ever since I've been a granny, which has been 21 years, we've been protesting against the sale of violent video games and war toys. And this is one of the early photos, and then this is a later one. And this is another occasion on which we often, always now, do this with the Mémé Déchaînées. And we struggle through their French words, and you do our English words, and we learn along the way. Another event which we are quite pleased with and do every year is to work with a group called Equitas, human rights group, and they invite human rights workers from more than 60 countries around the world, and they come to Sainte Anne de Bellevue and are billeted at John Abbott Cégep, and they have workshops on all kinds of ways that human rights workers can improve their efficiency working with their countries and their governments and their people. And so we teach them every year to write protest songs. We do it both in French and in English. And that's an annual event for us. Now we also had something that we were quite pleased about, which we did for a number of years. And it was what we call the Sweatshop Fashion Show. And I don't know if any other granny groups did anything like this. It was a big cause several years back where we were hoping that we could make an impact on companies like Nike and The Gap, and it was always very well received. I don't know how much headway we've made, because now when you go to buy clothes, there are an awful lot of clothes manufactured abroad, but I do think the working conditions in many places have been improved. Not everywhere, we know that. So that was another thing we were proud of doing, and that we would go to, this was the anti-asbestos. And this is a particularly pressing issue here in Quebec. Some of you may not know, we have a town called Asbestos where they do asbestos mining. And the curious thing about this photo is that the policeman who was speaking to us was very sympathetic, because he had family from asbestos, and they had family whose health had been adversely affected by asbestos. And the other project, this is CanSec. Yeah. And we, at the CanSec demonstrations we did a few years, we had Grannies from Toronto, Ottawa, and Montreal at Lansdowne Park. We can't end without showing off our calendar. We made $20,000 selling this calendar to over 2,000 people. And I think some of you got copies of this 2 years ago. And we discovered a few things along the way. First of all, that we have pretty good looking legs. But it was a wonderful solidarity building exercise. We decided not to do it again because it didn't give us enough time to rage. And you will see the fruits of this fundraising tomorrow when you see the Granny Power, which will be at Cinema de Parc just next door. So we have traveled a long way since the birth of Montreal Raging Grannies in Joan Hadwell's living room. Now we're on YouTube and Facebook. We have our own website. We even have business cards. We're not going to hand them out to you. We got the idea, I think, from maybe Vicky's group and at one of the earlier Uncons. So we've joined the 21st century. And before we finish, I would just like for our wonderful founders who are here with us tonight, Barbara, Mary, and Joan, to stand up. And we will give them a great round of applause. Joan Hadwell, we'd like to thank you for your wisdom, initiative, and faithfulness to the cause. Barbara Seaford, our indefatigable songwriter over the years. She's still writing. Joan, how many have you written now? I mean, Barbara.
She's still doing it. 3,700.
3,700.
Oh my God.
And Mary Rowan. What I'd like to say about Mary is, if you want to know a good book to read, just consult Mary. She's always reading, and she's always recommending books. So thanks to these three women, our group got started, and I'm glad we could acknowledge them this evening. Thank you for your